Welcome to this explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled to be your guide today as we untangle what is, honestly, one of the most critical challenges facing organizations right now, and that is finding actual strategic meaning in an absolute sea of digital data. Because let's face it, the modern digital landscape is a loud, messy place. It is so easy to get completely lost in a flood of numbers and lose sight of your actual business goals. So today, we're going to fix that. We are going to explore exactly how to align your marketing metrics with your core business objectives, moving away from those fluffy vanity numbers and toward real strategic clarity.
Okay, let's just dive right into the agenda. We're going to kick things off with the data deluge, then move into the vanity metrics trap. From there, we'll talk about measuring what actually matters, how attribution shapes your budget, and finally, we'll wrap up by looking at the future of measurement.
So, Section 1, the data deluge, and identifying which information actually matters.
You know, every single digital interaction today creates a footprint. When someone searches for something on Google, when they pause on a TikTok, or maybe when they abandon a shopping cart, they leave behind what we call measurable behavioral signals. These are the raw ingredients, things like website sessions, click-through rates, bounce rates, video completion rates, email opens, and app downloads. Now, modern organizations are incredibly good at scooping up enormous amounts of this information. But here's the major commercial catch. Just because we have more data absolutely does not mean we are automatically making better decisions. And because of that, we face this massive gap between simply collecting data and actually understanding our business performance. It's kind of wild, but one of the biggest challenges in digital marketing isn't a lack of information anymore. It's the inability to figure out what that information is actually telling us. Tech platforms are more than happy to hand you endless streams of data. But measurement should never, ever exist just because a platform makes a certain data point available. Which brings us right to Section 2, the vanity metrics trap. This is what happens when really impressive numbers hide completely flat business outcomes. Let me tell you a quick story about a Toronto-based immigration consulting firm. So they were running these Google Ads campaigns, and one day the marketing team proudly marches into a meeting to report this massive number. 120,000 ad impressions. Add to that 15,000 clicks and an 8% click-through rate. Now, at first glance, leadership was thrilled. The campaign looked like a total home run. But then management asked the golden question, right? They asked, well, how many qualified consultation bookings actually resulted in signed clients? The answer? Crickets. It was very, very few. The team had successfully optimized for visibility, but completely failed to optimize for actual business outcomes. They fell straight into the trap of dashboard dependency. This trap can be so incredibly stark when you look at the data side by side. Take this online furniture retailer in Calgary. They got some viral TikTok exposure, and boom, they saw a 300% growth in website traffic and a 250% increase in Instagram engagement. Looks like a huge win on paper, right? But their revenue stayed completely flat. Not only that, actually, their cart abandonment increased and their return rates rose. So they generated all this massive attention, but absolutely no profitable customer behavior. And this is the textbook definition of vanity metrics. They are numbers that look super impressive on a dashboard, but do not reflect meaningful business performance in any way. We're talking about things like raw follower counts or totally unqualified traffic volume. Now, I do want to be clear here, raw metrics aren't totally useless. They provide really vital operational intelligence. Like if you have a sudden spike in your bounce rate, that might point to a slow loading web page that needs fixing. But using those same metrics to measure strategic success, that is a total trap. So how do we fix this? Let's move to Section 3, measuring what actually matters, and how we start building strategic KPIs. Okay, here is the absolute bedrock of strategic measurement. A metric simply tells you what happened. That's it. A KPI, or a key performance indicator, answers a much more important question. Are we making meaningful progress toward a strategic business objective? Think about a Canadian healthcare tech company that sells telemedicine software. They could track website traffic, but again, that's just a metric. Or they could track the number of qualified clinic demos booked. Now that is a KPI. The word key is in there for a reason. Not every single metric deserves executive attention. KPIs are contextual, and they connect directly to actual business success. To avoid getting stuck in that dashboard dependency we talked about, organizations really need to follow this specific 4-step sequence. Step 1, define the business objective. Step 2, define the marketing objective. Step 3, establish the KPI. And Step 4, identify supporting metrics. Let's look at this with a real-world scenario. Imagine TD Bank wants to reduce their in-branch servicing costs. That's the overarching business objective.
Step 2, the marketing objective, would be encouraging customers to actively use mobile banking tools instead. So for step 3, the KPI becomes monthly active mobile banking users. And finally, step 4, the supporting metrics. These are things like app downloads and login frequency. If you skip this sequence, you are just going to end up with a lot of measurement noise. Ultimately, it all comes down to this really profound behavioral insight. Measurement systems do not simply observe organizations, they shape organizations. Literally, you become what you measure. If you reward your marketing team for getting impressions, well, they're going to go out and optimize for cheap visibility. But if you reward them for qualified leads, they will optimize for customer quality. If you reward retention, they'll build relationships. Your KPI framework isn't just a scorecard, it's fundamentally a behavioral governance system. Moving on to Section 4, attribution shapes the budget. Once you actually know your KPIs, how do you figure out which marketing activities drove those results? Welcome to the tricky world of attribution. There are a bunch of different frameworks used to assign credit across a customer journey, mostly because customer journeys are rarely a straight line anymore. Imagine a Canadian shopping for a car. They might watch some YouTube reviews, do some Google comparisons, read a Reddit thread, click an Instagram ad, and then finally book a test drive. So who gets the credit for that sale? A first-click model gives 100% of the credit to the very first interaction. Last click gives it all to the final interaction. Linear shares it equally across the board. Time decay gives more weight to the most recent touches, and data-driven uses algorithmic modeling to figure it out. Historically, almost everyone used last click just because it was easy, but as we're about to see, that can cause some massive headaches. Let's see how this plays out in real life. Take a Nova Scotia tourism campaign. The customer journey here has 3 distinct steps. YouTube generates the initial destination awareness, Instagram builds emotional engagement, and a Google search finally captures that booking intent. If leadership relies purely on last-click attribution, Google search looks incredibly valuable, right? While YouTube looks like a total waste of money because it didn't directly drive the final click. They might even cut the YouTube budget completely ignoring the fact that without that initial awareness, the search would never have happened in the first place. Attribution models don't just sit passively on a dashboard. They directly shape your media investment, your channel prioritization, and your budget decisions.
And finally, Section 5. Where is all of this heading? Let's take a look at the future of measurement, specifically predictive analytics and ESG. Traditionally, digital analytics have been purely descriptive. They were always looking in the rearview mirror of what happened last month or yesterday. But the future is predictive analytics. We're moving toward looking forward to answer what is likely to happen next. For example, Canadian retailers are already using AI for predictive demand forecasting to predict Boxing Day sales. They're analyzing which products are going to trend and which audiences are most likely to convert long before it even happens. It is a massive, game-changing shift from just doing historical reporting to real strategic anticipation. And the other massive shift is in what we're actually measuring. It's no longer just about profit and conversions. Modern measurement is fast becoming an ESG, environmental, social, and governance accountability system. Marketers today have to measure privacy protection under strict frameworks like PIPEDA and Quebec's Law 25. They have to measure ethical AI practices, carefully tracking consent rates, and algorithmic fairness. Even environmental accountability is becoming a huge factor. Did you know organizations are now tracking the computational carbon emissions generated by real-time programmatic ad auctions? It's crazy. Measurement is evolving from a pure profitability tool into a fully holistic system of corporate governance. Which brings us right to the end of our explainer. I want to leave you with this final, critical question to ask yourself and your team. Are your metrics driving sustainable growth, or are you just optimizing for short-term noise? Remember, simply having more data doesn't magically mean you're making better decisions. You've got to align your KPIs with your core business objectives, truly understand how your attribution models are shaping your budget, and get ready for a future where ethics and sustainability are just as measurable as your clicks. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the strategic foundations of digital marketing measurement. Keep asking those tough questions, and happy analyzing.